Hey, everybody. If you can hear me and if you can see me, write a comment so that I know that you're with us today and that everything is working properly. I see we have our final countdown right here. So just a few more seconds and then we will get started. So again, if you can hear me and if you can see me, just leave a comment below the video. And you know what? If you've already left a comment, if you can hear me and see me, then you should also go to the English is Fun Facebook community and press like so that you can follow everything that is happening in our community, in our group on Facebook. So again, hey guys, my name is Christopher Huntley, or a lot of people call me Chris Americos. And okay, I see people are writing that they see me and they hear me loud and clear. That's great. Hi from the Czech Republic. Hello from Brazil. Great to be with you guys today. And today we're talking about formal English and informal English. It's a really important topic. So I think that you guys are going to get a lot of useful information today. And I've prepared a lot on this topic. I've talked about this topic for a long time. I've presented this topic many times to many students, many groups. So we're going to have a lot of information right now. If you don't understand what I'm saying, or if I speak too quickly, feel free to write a comment under the video and say, hey, Chris, shut up, I don't understand. And I will try to say it in a different way. And hopefully that will help. So as I said, our topic today is formal and informal English. And maybe, you know, while I'm introducing everything at the beginning right now, those of you who are with us already, you can write a comment and maybe say what you think the difference is. What is the difference between formal English and informal English? All right, and I'm going to answer some comments. Hi, Olga. Thank you for joining us. Thanks. I think that you'll find some useful information here as well. Let's see. Everyone from Poland, from Armenia. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining. Today is going to be a great lesson, I promise. So let's get right to it because we do have a lot of information to talk about today. And as I said, it's about formal and informal English, and sometimes it's confusing to understand what the difference is. So let's see if you guys can give me some examples. I see someone has written a comment in the chat already, no apostrophes in formal English. Well, yeah, you're right, that usually words where you need to use apostrophes, we can use the full version of this word. So we call those contractions. We'll talk a little bit more about that today also. I see someone said hello from Chile, and someone said hello from Turkey. Wow, we have a really international crowd today. So, okay, guys, in case you don't know who I am, or in case you missed it at the beginning, I am Chris Huntley, or Chris Americos. You can find my free videos on YouTube, on Facebook, on VK, lots of different places. You can just search for English with Chris Americos, and you will find me. Also, you can find my links in the comments below this video. And you know, if you have any questions about studying English or about teaching English, you can send them to me because I'm a certified teacher of English. I'm a teacher trainer. I'm a teacher recruiter. And I have my own language teaching business, online and offline. And I also teach other people how to start their own language teaching business. And that might be with English, it might be with Italian, Polish, Russian, whatever language you teach, you can create a business around that. So I see there's a question here. Hello from Italy. Hi, guys. Hi, I love Italy. I used to live there. And someone's asking where I live right now. Well, right now I live in Florida in the United States, and I really like it here. The weather's great, and especially this time of the year, as we get closer to winter, the weather's amazing in Florida because it's not too hot and it's definitely not cold. But the negative part of living in Florida is that there aren't very many seasons. So there's just summer and summer and summer and summer, and then like a cold summer and a hot summer. So okay, let's see. Someone wrote, "Hi from Thailand." Hello. Hi from El Salvador. Wow, we really have people from all over the world here today. It's great. Someone asked, "What other languages do you know?" I actually lived in Russia for 8 years. So I speak Russian also, but English is my first language. And I've studied lots of languages in my life. I just love languages. I've studied German, Italian, Latin, French, Spanish, Romanian, Greek. I've studied a lot of languages, but unfortunately, I only know English and Russian. So, guys, let's talk about informal English and formal English. First of all, when do people use formal English? Well, people use formal English when they are in formal situations. For example, job interviews. For example, meetings that are very important. For example, when they're speaking to someone who's much older than them. These are some situations when we need to speak formal English. We need to use formal English. And when do people use informal English? Well, we use informal English most of the time. So in most situations in our lives, we use informal English. When we're talking to friends, when we're in shops, when we, in a lot of situations, most of the we're going to use informal English. And that is something that's very important. And a lot of people who study English actually get confused about this, I think, because they use formal English in a lot of situations where they don't need to, or they should be using informal English. So that presents problems because it sounds unnatural. And, sometimes people think that they should always use formal English, but that's definitely not true. So let's talk a little bit more about when and why people might use formal English or informal English. And first of all, let me present this information in this way. I'm going to tell you 7 things that are different about spoken English and proper English. Or we might say formal English and informal English. Some of the things that are different are, first of all, writing. Writing is usually something that is forever. Writing is permanent. And once we write something, we can't change it. So especially online, people write English a lot. And this is usually, we need to understand how we should write it, if we should use formal or informal English. And on social media sites, social networking sites, people usually use informal English. Another thing that people kind of make a mistake about or maybe get confused about is emails. Because emails might be formal or might be informal. So if we have a work email, then probably we need to use formal English. But if we are just writing an email with a person who's a friend, or maybe we have a good relationship with someone from work and we can speak to them like a friend, then we might want to use informal English. And formal English might sound too formal, might not sound correct. So when we're writing, we want to think about what type of English we're using. Also, when we're speaking, usually we can change what we say. So, we're flowing and we can say, oh, I made a mistake. I wanted to say something different. We might say, you know, it's not recorded usually. Like right now, I'm probably being recorded because I'm doing this video for hundreds or thousands of people. But when we're speaking to someone face to face, we can make mistakes. We can change things. So informal English is usually much better and more appropriate to use. Also, speech is usually used for immediate actions, right? When we write something, we're planning it further in advance. That means that we can also think about what we're writing, and it's easier for us to use formal English because we can choose the right words. We can do some research. We can find what's correct or what's appropriate. What else? Also, when we are writing something, we don't get immediate feedback from people. So this is a little different. And writing can use punctuation. Writing can use other clues and symbols to help people understand what we're talking about. So this is one thing that we want to think about when we're talking about formal and informal English, is writing written English or spoken English. So moving forward, let's look at some examples. First example is, if we say, let's stop for the night. Is this formal English or is this informal English? What do you guys think? And you might notice that there's some sounds outside my window. Somebody's cutting the grass, it sounds like. What do you think? Is this example formal or informal? Is this formal English or is this informal English? It's informal, that's right, that's right. Let's stop for the night is informal. And if we want to speak formal English or say the same idea in formal English, then maybe we would say something like, let us adjourn for the evening. Now, guys, think about this. Have you ever heard someone say this? Probably not, because nobody really speaks like this. This is very, very formal. However, you might hear this in a film if a queen or king maybe speaks like this, or you know, another person who needs to speak with formal English. Great. So that was one of our examples. As you can see there, we changed let's to let us because let's uses an apostrophe. And in formal English, we usually don't want to use these words with apostrophes. Like someone said in the chat earlier, these words are called contractions. So we don't want to use contractions in formal English. It's one of our rules. So other words like don't, instead of saying don't, we need to say do not. Instead of saying won't, will not. And lots of other examples. This is one idea or one way that we can understand how we should use formal English. We should not use contractions or these shorter words with apostrophes. I see in the chat someone's asking, what does the word adjourn mean? Adjourn could mean something like meet, or it could mean something like to start or to finish, like to mark the beginning or mark the end of something. Usually it's something like come together and start. Great. So let's look at another example. This example is you eat sushi with chopsticks, not a fork. So tell me, is this formal or informal English? You eat sushi with chopsticks, not with a fork. What do you guys think? Formal or informal? Correct. It's informal. Yes, this is informal. And let's look at another example, formal example. Sushi should be eaten with chopsticks, not with a fork. Yes, should be eaten with chopsticks, not with a fork. This is more formal. Now, you might be asking, why? Why is this formal? Well, it's mostly because we use something here called universal you in our first example, our informal example. Universal you is when we say, you should do this, or you should not do this. And when we say you about all people, for example, how do you say this in English? Or how do you get to the bank? This is using the word you, not about one person or not about a specific group of people, but this is using the word you for all people in the world. And another way that we can say this is, how does one say this in English? This is much more formal. So in our formal example, sushi should be eaten with chopsticks, not with a fork. Here we don't say you. We're just saying a general rule, and we're not using you to mean all people. So this is another aspect of formal English. So we already said that we shouldn't use contractions in formal English. And let me tell you this. Let's compare. Let's compare formal English to formal attire. Now, you might not know the word attire, so let me tell you what that means. Attire is another word for clothes. You know, things that you wear. And the word attire is a formal word for clothes. That's right. A lot of words in English have informal variants or informal ways that we can say them and formal ways that we can say them. So formal English is like formal attire. You don't always need to wear it. Just think of it like this. If you put on a nice suit, maybe a three-piece suit, you have a jacket, you have a shirt, you have a vest, and you have a tie. And if you go to the beach in a suit, you're going to look very strange. People are going to make jokes. People are going to point at you and laugh. They're going to say, that is weird. That's strange. And I think I would make fun of you too. Because you're trying to put something that's formal in an informal situation. The same idea, the same concept, if you go to a wedding and you wear a swimsuit. You're being too informal at a formal event or in a formal situation. So you don't always need to use formal English. And this is a big problem that a lot of people have who are studying English. They want to use formal English all the time. Guys, please don't do that. You just sound strange. Really. You don't need to use formal language all the time. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about why it's so terrible or strange. But definitely you want to pay attention and not use formal English in situations like this. You know, don't go to the beach in a suit. All right, guys, so let's look at some more rules of formal English. Formal English doesn't use contractions, like we said, and in formal English, we usually don't use phrasal verbs. So I see, I'm going to check the comments here real quick. Someone said, that's unkind. Yeah, you know, it's not kind, but when someone uses formal language, we usually laugh because it sounds strange. Someone wrote, would you please tell us about the TEFL exam a little bit? Sorry, today we're not going to talk about the TEFL, but you can send me a message and we can discuss it later. or maybe in another video next week, I will discuss this topic, maybe. Someone says, I agree with you. Okay, great. So yeah, in formal English, we don't usually use phrasal verbs. Now, what are phrasal verbs? Phrasal verbs are things like get up, go away, or run away, and things like this. So instead, for example, instead of get up, we could say rise. Instead of run away, we could say escape, and many other words, many other examples of this. So as a general rule, we don't want to use phrasal verbs in formal English. Now, remember, guys, I'm telling you these things as general rules. It doesn't mean that you can't do it. It doesn't mean that you are wrong. It just means that it won't sound as formal as it should. So it's better to follow these rules than not to follow these rules. Great. Another rule of using formal English is that we don't want to use slang. And we can see this especially when we talk about greetings and farewells, when we say hi and when we say bye. So for example, how do you do? This is a very formal thing to say. And usually an informal thing to say will be, how's it going? Or what's up? What's up is kind of like slang. So even though today many people say what's up would be very inappropriate in a formal situation. So we don't want to use slang when we are trying to be formal. Let's see, another thing that we should avoid is when we're using formal English, formal language in general, we don't want to use first-person pronouns. Now, a pronoun is a word like I, you, he, she, it, we, you, they. These are pronouns. And we want to try not to use first-person pronouns when we write formal language and when we speak formal language. So, for example, we don't want to say, I think it's better to do this. Instead, we can say, it would be better to do this. And we can come up with other phrases that are similar to show that this is a general idea, not just my idea. Let's go back to the chat so that I can answer some questions. What if I learn British English, not American English? My English is formal. Good question, actually. Good question. It's not important if it's British English or American English. These rules apply to all types of English. And even if you use British English, there is formal and informal language that you can use or not use. So it doesn't matter if it's British or American English. Your speech and writing will be formal depending on the words that you choose to use and how you use them. Let's see, another question. Phrasal verbs do not belong in formal English. Why do official tests have phrasal verbs? Well, I would say that the test is testing your knowledge of English, and phrasal verbs are part of English. And again, remember what I said. These are not strict 100% rules. These are suggestions, and these are just how the language usually works. In formal English, sure, you can see that people use phrasal verbs too. It's, natural part of our language. But in general, we use phrasal verbs much, much less in formal language. Let's see, another question. Is it a mistake using correct words in informal meetings if we don't know the slang or phrasal verbs? Correct words. I understand what you're saying. Well, again, let me repeat what I'm saying. It's not a matter of being correct or being incorrect. It's a matter of being formal or informal. So if you don't know slang words, you don't know phrasal verbs, use the words that you know because that's what you have, but there are specific words, and we will talk about those words soon. There are specific words that sound more formal than others. So it doesn't matter when you use them, it's going to sound formal. People will think that you are being formal. Let's see, someone said, repeat about not using pronouns. Yeah, so we don't want to use first-person pronouns. First-person pronouns are the words I and we. Again, this is not a rule, this is just a suggestion. Usually, we use the language like this. When we use I and we, it sounds more like it's an individual opinion. It doesn't sound like this is a rule, or it doesn't sound formal. So we want to try to use them less, and instead we can use phrases like phrases that make it more neutral, that don't sound like this is only my opinion, but it sounds like this is a general fact. Great. So let's see, another rule about using formal English. Don't use acronyms. If you don't know what an acronym is a word that is made smaller, or several words that are made smaller, and we use them as letters. So for example, FBI, CIA, and many, many other words like this. Going back to the chat, someone asks, where are you from? I am from the United States. I'm living currently in the state of Florida, but I have lived in many, many places around the world, so I consider myself a world citizen, global citizen. That's what we usually say. So acronyms like FBI, CIA, things like this, we don't want to use them in formal language, especially when we are writing. When we're writing, it's better to write out the whole word and not to use an acronym. Great. So let's talk a little bit more about formal English and why it can be difficult. Formal English is like tying a tie. If you don't know how to tie a tie, it can be difficult to do it the first time or the first few times. But if you know how to do it, it becomes easier. However, you only need to tie a tie for special situations, right? So you only need to use formal English in special situations. I would say that I use formal English in maybe 1% of my speech, maybe even less. Most situations do not require formal English. Most situations require informal English. And see another question in the chat here. How about idioms? That's a good question. Well, you can use idioms in formal English. You just need to make sure they are not, don't include slang. Because a lot of idioms might be some kind of slang, or they might use some kind of dirty words or something like this. So, an idiom can be used in formal English as long as it's an appropriate idiom. We might actually change the idiom a little bit to make it sound more formal, following the rules that we've been talking about. I see another question here. Is it wrong to say I can't instead of I cannot? That's right. We should use cannot for formal English and can't for informal English. Let's see. Another question. Do you know if the TOEFL is that difficult? Guys, we're not talking about TOEFL today. Sorry. Another video. In another video, we'll talk about that, or you can send me a direct message. And I have another question. Could you explain a little bit about American pronunciation, like pronouncing the sound R? I'd love to talk about that today. Today we have a big topic, formal and informal English, and we have a lot of information to go through, so I can't talk about that today, but I do have a special pronunciation course called English Hacks, where I talk all about pronunciation. So you can Google that, or you can send me a message and we can talk about it later. Let's see. Someone wrote, "Are you approved by the UN for being a global citizen?" Nope, not yet. Hopefully soon. Great. And okay, good. That looks like it's all the questions for now. So let's go back. So yeah, guys, we don't need formal English all the time. Let's talk about informal English a little bit more. Informal English is everyday English. So usually when you meet a person, they're going to speak informal English. They're usually going to use this type of speech, this type of writing. And honestly, young people today speak with informal English almost all the time, even in a lot of formal situations. Some people at international conferences and international meetings actually think that this is a problem because American people are never formal. I can't say never, but in most situations, we're very informal. So we should be understanding of that when we speak English with other people. Another aspect of informal English is that it's more natural and it's more understandable. Because more people around the world know these informal words and they know informal phrases, it's much clearer and much easier. And we use, like I said, we use informal English in so many different situations usually that this is what we are used to. So it sounds more natural. Informal English is more flexible. You can change it. You can make mistakes and it sounds okay. And other people should respect how you use this language more. When we're being formal, there are very strict rules. So, you know, if someone makes a mistake there, it's easy to see that, oh, that wasn't very formal or didn't sound correct. But with informal English, it's not so important. Also, informal English allows contractions, so words like can't or words like don't or won't. And it also allows you to use the full form of the word. So, for example, if I say cannot, then this will be just to stress or to emphasize a point. For example, you can smoke on the balcony, but you cannot smoke inside. Here we can see that there's a big emphasis on this. I could say, but you can't smoke inside, and it has the same meaning, but there's not an emphasis on this. No stress. Great. So let's look at this. Excuse me, would you mind repeating that? Or we can say, come again. Both of these phrases are the same, basically. They both ask someone to repeat. Let me go back to the comments because I see that there's a lot of them right now popping up. About the Brazilian accent, you know, every accent sounds a little bit different, and usually I can understand people with accents. It just depends on their vocabulary and grammar. Can you make a video about phrasal verbs? Guys, I release a video about phrasal verbs every single day on my YouTube channel. So go check that out. Just Google English with Chris Americos, or you can Google daily phrasal verbs, and you will find hundreds of videos. I have almost 1 year of phrasal verbs for every single day. So if you're interested in that, go there. Great. What else did people write here? I don't know slang, so I speak formal English. No, not necessarily. If you don't know slang, that's fine. Speaking formal English is using higher level words and using more rules. So probably you don't speak formal English. It's much more difficult to speak formal English, actually. And we'll see a lot of examples of formal English here in a second when I show you those examples. Great, so let's go back. 2 phrases. Excuse me, would you mind repeating that? It's very formal. Would you mind? Or would you? When we add would you, it makes it sound a little more formal usually. Or informally, we might just say, come again, or what was that, or repeat, please, or say that again. So a lot of times, it would be better to say these phrases if we're in an informal situation. But if we're in a formal situation, then we want to say, would you mind, excuse me. All right, next. This is a big question for us to think about right now. Okay, I see in the comments, someone's asking, please repeat your YouTube channel. It's English with Chris Americos, but you can also find it in the comments below this video. I sent all of my links at the beginning of this chat, and at the end of this chat, I will also send them. So you can find all the links there, and you can find all of that stuff. Someone also wrote, your English seems British, that's so good. Actually, I speak American English, but I try to speak very clearly so that everyone can understand me. Someone wrote, lemmy, gimme, dunno. Yes, very good. These are informal words, and actually I planned to talk about that later, so we'll come to that. Let's see. Someone also wrote, how can I improve the English spoken for Americans, like you don't stress some words? Well, this, first of all, you need to decide what type of accent or what type of English you are trying to learn. And that's something that I talk a lot about in my English Hacks course. So if you're interested in that, we can discuss that another time. So just send me a message or click on the links that I will share at the end of the video. Great. So here's a question for everybody. Why does formal speech and overly correct speech sound unnatural? And the answer is that it sounds unnatural because people don't usually speak like that. People usually use informal English. People usually use informal English. And let's just imagine that you're speaking with your friends and all of a sudden they start to speak very formally. You think, well, that's strange, right? We're friends. You don't have to talk to me like that. You might even feel offended. It might sound rude to you that he started speaking to you so formally. At least that's how it would feel to me. So, guys, it does sound very strange and sometimes even rude when we use formal English. So formal English is something that we want to know, we want to learn, but we want to know when to use it. We don't want to use it all the time. We want to use it only in situations where it's necessary. Okay, let's do something else real quick because we have been discussing this topic for a while. I'm going to give you an informal word, and you try to give me the formal equivalent or the formal version of that word, okay? Let's see. I see some people writing here in the comments. Try to search for your channel. It's English with Chris Americos. Actually, you can find the link in the comments under the video. At the very beginning of this video, I left a big comment with all the links. So you can find it there. And at the end of the video, I will also share those comments. So you can click that. Another person asked, what is your accent? My accent is American. I think that I have a standard American accent. That's what I try to speak with. But I have lived in a lot of different places. So some of my words might have an accent from different states around the United States. Great. Someone says, even when you're talking to your boss, should you use informal English? It depends on your relationship with your boss. Probably at the beginning, you want to use formal English, but if your boss is American, then they'll probably tell you, hey, don't use that formal language with me. Just talk to me like a normal person. Great. So let's see. Someone also asked, get and got is informal. That's a great question. That's a great question. I wasn't going to talk about it today, but but it's a good question, so I'll talk about it. In informal English, we use get and got a lot. We use it all over the place. We use it all over the place, and in formal English, we tend to use other words, other verbs that can replace them. So we might say, if we said to get ready, we might say to prepare, or other examples like this. Great. Let's see. Someone also wrote smarty pants. Thanks. They said, how do you say turn it on? Well, if you wrote it in English, looks like you know how to say it. But you could also say initiate something. Great. Someone asked, what's the topic today? Today's topic is formal and informal English. All right, let's get back to the topic. So I'm going to say an informal word, and you give me what you think the formal version is. The first one is ask for. To ask for something. In formal English, we can say to request. Okay, so right now what we're doing is we're comparing words that mean almost the same. So they have almost the same meaning, but when we use one word, it's informal, and when we use another word, it's formal. So ask for is informal, and request is formal. Another example is to ask, and the formal version would be to inquire. So I'm calling to ask about the apartment for rent. Or we might say, I'm calling to inquire about the apartment that you are renting or that you're letting. Another example, in formal English, we can say need. Formal English, require. Informal English, get. Formal English, receive. Informal, give. Formal, provide. I see a question right now in the chat, so I'll jump over there. Let's see. Initiate. Initiate the computer, initiate the car. No, of course, we can't use that for every situation. Just the first thing that came to my mind. But we usually have special words for each of those situations. So for example, the car, we would say, start the car. For the computer, we would say to boot or to boot up the computer. There are a lot of examples that we might use. Great. Next, we could say informal to say sorry, formal to apologize, informal to tell, formal to inform, informal to book, like to book a restaurant to book a table at a restaurant. And formally, we could say to reserve. We could say help, that's informal, and formal version would be to assist. And my last example that I'll give you, informal, check, formal, verify. So these are some good examples of words that are informal or formal, and when we use them, they sound like this to people. So, if I say, I require your signature on this document, the person I'm speaking to will understand that this is very formal. And if this is my friend, then he'll probably say, what? Why are you talking to me like that? Instead, we can say, I need your signature on this document or on this paper. So this is something that we want to think about when we're studying English in the future. We need to understand which words sound formal so that we don't sound strange to people. Great. There are some other words that we might use like this also. The examples that I just gave were verbs, action words. But there are other words like nouns and adjectives that might be formal or informal as well. Let me go back to the chat because I see some people have posted some comments. Subscribe to your channel, and I added you. Thank you so much. I think that you'll really find a lot of useful content on my YouTube channel. Someone said, please out and indicate. That's also a very, very good example where indicate would be more formal. And someone also wrote, elevator and lift. Is this an example? No, actually, elevator and lift is an example of British and American English. So usually in American English, someone will say elevator, whereas in British English, someone will say lift. And you might know that because American popular culture is very, very popular around the world, music, films, and other things, a lot of British English speakers do understand the American versions of these words, but unfortunately, a lot of American English speakers do not. So if you go to the United States and you say, I'm in the lift, someone might not understand what you're saying, unfortunately. Examples of other words that can be formal or informal. For example, kids is a very informal word, whereas it would be more formal to say children. An informal adjective would be something like bad or good, and more formal would be negative or positive. We might use the word right. It's more informal than using the word correct or incorrect and using the word wrong, right? So there's a lot of words like this. We could use cheap. This is informal. Or more formal would be inexpensive. We might say loaded. That guy's loaded. It means he has a lot of money. And it's very informal. It's like slang. But if we want to be more formal, we might say he's rich, or he's affluent, or he's well off or well-to-do. These are all different things that we might say. And guys, there are a lot of examples of these things. So I don't want to spend too much of our time right now going through them. I go into a lot of detail in my course called English Hacks. So if you write me and you're interested in that course, I can talk to you about that a little bit later. Great. So why do people think that formal language sometimes sounds rude, or formal language sounds strange or unnatural? Well, one reason why is because formal language sometimes is a defense mechanism. It's something that we use to defend ourselves. And what do I mean by defend ourselves? You might think, well, someone has to attack if we're going to defend, right? And yeah, that's what it sounds like. It sounds like we think someone is attacking us. We need to protect ourselves, defend ourselves. So in a lot of situations, for example, when we communicate with the government or in other formal situations, we might use formal language to be very exact and very correct. So it sounds like we're trying not to make a mistake because we might lose something, or we might be punished for making a mistake or for saying the wrong thing. So a person who hears us using this formal language might think this person, is trying to protect themselves. They are trying to. They think that they're under attack, that someone is attacking them verbally or with language. So this is another reason why we shouldn't use formal language all the time. Just think about this. If you say, hey, what's up, Chris? And I say, how do you do? I am well. And how is your day? Good day to you. Then you might think, did I miss something? Why is this guy talking to me like this? You might think that it's a little rude, especially if we're friends, especially if we've talked before, and we used informal language. A lot of times also native speakers will use formal English like this. So when I lived in Russia, I saw this a lot, that I have my language center in Russia, and sometimes teachers who work there, they would speak to the Russian staff, and their English was good, but it wasn't great. And the teachers who are from the United States or from England, they might use very formal English when they have a problem. They might use high-level words and try to say something that sounds very sophisticated or high class or very proper. And this was a problem because the employees there who were not native speakers, they didn't know all of those words. They didn't understand why the person was speaking to them like a book. So yeah, formal English can be like a defense mechanism. Formal language can also be like a pedestal. So what do I mean by a pedestal? I mean that formal language sometimes makes people think that we feel like we're better than them. We can use bigger words and more formal language, more correct language. And that is why we're correct, and that's why we're right in our discussion or something. So we don't want to make people feel like they're lower than us. Using formal English does this, if it's not the correct situation, right? So we want to make sure that we use formal English in the correct situations, because otherwise someone might be offended or might think that we're being very rude. And that's why formal language makes people feel uncomfortable, because they think that you're separating yourself from them. They're not comfortable just to speak with you. They have to now be on guard. They need to also defend themselves. And this isn't what we want when we create open communication between people. Another thing is that formal language creates barriers. That's kind of what I started talking about just now. Formal English can create a barrier as far as saying that this is who I am and this is who you are. A lot of other languages have special language for formal and informal expressions. And for example, a lot of languages have a special word for you as one person when we want to speak informally, and a lot of languages have a special word for you being formal and showing respect to someone. But just think, when we use this type of formal language, we're separating ourselves from other people. We're saying that I deserve respect. We're saying that we're different because either one person is younger and one person's older. So we're highlighting, we're showing that this difference is big enough to influence how we speak. And in English, we don't have those special words. So formal language is used like this. So when someone uses formal language with us, when we try to use informal language, it creates a big barrier or separation between these two people. And think about it like this. When we always use formal language, it's like never smiling. Now, a lot of people in different countries might have different opinions about when you should smile and how often you should smile, but I think you know that when you speak English, you need to smile. If you don't smile, then people might think there's something wrong with you. Now, take a look at my face when I give you this example. If I say, I love your dress. Or if I say, I love your dress. Sure, my intonation is a little different here, but also my face is different. So when we don't smile all the time, then people who speak English, they usually think about it like this person isn't open, this person isn't happy, and I don't want to speak with that person because it'll make me sad. I won't be happy. But when we always use formal language, it's also like this. It's like this person is pushing me away. I don't really want to speak to this person because of this. And another thing to think about is that formal English is more like book English. And informal English is more like street English. So when you speak to people on the street, and when you want people on the street to speak back to you, you use informal English. When you speak to a book, I don't know how often you speak to a book, but I never speak to a book. So when you want to use this type of English, it's like speaking to a book. And it's like other people will think that you are a book, that you speak like a book. When I say speak like a book in English, I mean it sounds unnatural. Let's see. Let me go back to the comments. Someone said, is that why you laugh in silent moments? Laughing in silent moments is, we usually say, to break the silence. It's usually when someone's nervous. It's not usually about formal or informal English. Someone has also written, that's the difference between British and American people. Well, you know, there are a lot of differences between British and American people, but when it comes to formal and informal English, these rules and the things that I'm describing, and you know, separations between people when we use formal English, it's definitely true. It's not only British and American, Australian, Canadian also has this aspect of the language. It's just built into our language. And so let's think about it like this. When we use formal English or formal language in general, we're separating people into people who are like me and people who are not like me. I use informal English and the common language with people who are like me, because I don't need to think so much. I don't need to be so proper or correct, and I can express my thoughts sincerely or truly. And when I'm formal, or when speaking formal English, I need to be more correct. I need to be more careful about what I'm saying. I need to think more about it. And it's more planned. So I don't share that with everyone. I'm being more closed, not as open. So guys, another thing that I really want to say to everybody is make sure that you don't say shall. In formal English, we still don't say shall. We almost never say shall. The only time you're going to hear someone say shall is if they're making a joke, like they're trying to sound old, because that's what shall is. Or if it's a person who's a little older and they are making an offer to help you. For example, shall I take your bag? Or maybe if they're asking about plans, like, shall we go to the cinema? But just, you know, I want you guys to be able to speak more naturally and to sound more like a native speaker. And to do that, just take this word shall out of your head completely and just throw it away. Pretend that you never learned it. Honestly, guys, you don't need that word. I see there's a comment in the chat. Is American English more informal as a language than the British one? You know what? I think so. I think that American, maybe it's not correct to say that American English is more informal, but American people use the English language more informally. Let's say it like that. I think that's more accurate, more correct. So guys, you know, we're coming to the end here. Let me give you one more example. This is a big example, so let's compare a few different phrases. It's kind of a funny example, so I hope you'll get a laugh out of it. But just to show you how the same idea can be communicated in different contexts. So formal, informal, and informal are only two aspects of this idea. There are actually a lot of different levels or layers to this. So let's look at these phrases. If we say, he went to the little boy's room, this is a very, you know, very polite, but not too formal way to describe this situation. It also kind of sounds funny, little boy, especially if we're not talking about a little boy. We could also say little girl's room. Other people might say he went to pee. This is very informal, and some people might think that this is rude. We could also say he went to urinate. Now, if someone said this to me, I would laugh because it sounds too formal for this situation. This word is too correct, too scientific maybe. Another way that we could say this is he went to tinkle. Now, if someone said this to me, I would also laugh because this is a word for children. So you see, there are lots of different layers. There are lots of different ways to communicate something. And when we learn new phrases and words, we want to understand what context it's usually used in. Or we could say he went to take a leak. And this one sounds rude. This one is more slang, more conversational also. And it's a little more rude. It's more slang. So we don't want to use it in formal situations. But all of these things describe the same situation, and we might not understand how they're supposed to be used. These types of phrases are called euphemisms, or just common phrases that people use to describe a situation. So euphemisms can help us with formal situations because they describe the same situation, but they use different words. So guys, let's see. I see there's some more comments here. I always use shall, haha. Yeah, you got to forget that word. Just don't use it. Your English will be so much better. Someone said, are you Chris Americos on YouTube? I am. I am Chris Americos on YouTube. You can find me by searching for English with Chris Americos. You can send me a message on Facebook. You can click any of the links. I sent all the links at the beginning in the chat. And after this video is finished, I'll also send them into the comments under the video. And guys, thanks a lot for watching today. Unfortunately, our time is up for today, but I hopefully will be back next week at the same time, maybe a little earlier, and right here in the English is Fun community on Facebook. English is Fun has great posts all the time. You can check there every day, several times a day. They always have interesting posts and useful posts for improving your English. And they always have great live videos and great content. So make sure you stay posted there. Anyone who is trying to learn English, make sure you send them to this group. Tell them to press like so they don't miss anything. Also, make sure you go to my groups. Subscribe to my group. I have a group on Facebook that you can find. It's called English with Chris Americos. Also, I have a YouTube channel. Go there. I have free videos every single day. That's right, every day I post a new video. So yeah, guys, make sure you check everything out. It's been great. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Christopher Huntley, or Chris Americos. So you can find me online. Send me a message if you have any questions, and I will see you guys next week. Thank you, and have a great day.